Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we'll look at another horrific instance with you. Today we travel to Cortland, a city of contrasts where the dismal reality of gang violence and the clandestine trade of prohibited narcotics are balanced by the upright native citizens. Despite its tiny size, Cortland and the adjacent Pineola County, which has a population of 34,000, see its fair share of criminal activities and violent gangs. Regular shootouts and arrests of persons engaged in illegal trading are regular. This bad environment was essential in our journey. On December 6, 2014 at 2009, emergency services were notified of a vehicle fire on a remote road. The first firefighters to arrive on the location discovered a blazing Kia Arreo and immediately started quenching the flames. Inside the automobile, a terrible spectacle unfolded, with black smoke rising rapidly skyward. As the rescuers sprayed foam on the truck, they watched a shadowy figure slowly emerge from the neighboring underbrush. The silhouette resembled either a young woman or a toddler. The victim was terribly burned and resembled a live corpse. As the person neared, the firefighters noticed it was a young woman wearing only her underwear and ravaged in burns from head to toe. She approached them and pleaded for assistance. The sad woman was totally burned. Her garments had been burned, her skin was melting and slowly flowing down, and her entire body was bleeding. Her hair had burnt into a lump of ash, and her face was black with soot. A rescuer put a blanket around her scorched body and placed her on the ground. The firefighters remained by her side while they waited for the emergency medical care personnel. The young woman, hardly moving her lips, attempted to enunciate individual words that were inaudible to others nearby. Despite her state, she could not talk clearly, but numerous emergency responders were able to hear the names Eric or Derek when asked who had attacked her. She was evacuated from a tiny rural community to a hospital in Memphis. However, after suffering 93% burns to her body, the young woman died 4 hours later. Jessica Lane Chambers, 19, a local resident, was the victim. Jessica was raised in Cortland, living with her mother across the street from her grandma. While her father and stepmother resided further down the street, she was a small and frail young woman with a steely personality. She grew up in a chaotic family, as did many of her friends, relatives, and neighbors. Her father pleaded guilty to producing methamphetamine and was arrested for driving while intoxicated in the early 2000s. In 2006, her 28-year-old neighbor was shot several times in the yard. Jessica did not grow up in a positive environment, so she did not become a quiet choir girl. She smoked, argued with her parents, had unstable relationships with boyfriends who had legal issues, and, as her family was aware, occasionally responded aggressively during disagreements. Jessica's conduct got more severe at 17, following the death of her older brother Alan in an automobile accident in 2012. Her mother disapproved of Jessica's new boyfriend, so she moved out for several months. Her childhood was tough. Her father served time in prison, but by 2014 he had been freed and was working as a mechanic for the local sheriff's department. Jessica was not afraid about breaking the law. She occasionally sold illegal narcotics and was involved with local gangs. Nonetheless, the sweet and cheerful Jessica was respected and liked by practically everyone she knew, making her sudden death all the more puzzling. Rumors of a burnt car and an intentional fire-setting incident swiftly spread around her small community. Jessica's father's position in the sheriff's department allowed him to quickly learn about the neighboring car fire and the event involving his daughter. When his wife heard the news, she raced down the street to inform Jessica's mother of the awful situation. They got to the hospital when Jessica was still alive. The tragic demise of the young woman drew the nation's attention. Hundreds of people attended Jessica's funeral on December 13th, which was organized to celebrate a happy adolescent, a former student, a cheerleader, and a girl who aspired to be something more than her circumstances. A lengthy inquiry into this high-profile case ensued, sparking public interest. FBI, ATF, and U.S. Marshals were brought in to help in the local probe. The initial assumption suggested that the fire was caused by an automobile accident. However, this was swiftly ruled out because no signs of an emergency or any other difficulties were discovered on the spot. A thorough investigation of the burnt vehicle revealed no traces of impact or body damage. Thus, the theory was not substantiated. The dominant theory then changed to arson. However, at the time of the occurrence, the police had few leads, and a lack of evidence slowed the investigation. Investigators questioned almost everyone who had touch with Jessica during her final days. They also investigated the possibility that her boyfriend, who was in prison at the time of the arson, had ordered her death. However, this notion was discounted because he had been residing in Iowa since their split. Ali Alsanai, the owner of a petrol station, was also suspected. He was among the last persons to see Jessica alive. Ali made his statement and was released. There was speculation that Jessica had caused difficulty for herself by engaging with one of the local gangs. However, the gang members denied involvement and offered their condolences to the Chambers family. Many of those called in for interrogation had legitimate reasons to lie, even if they didn't know who killed her. The investigation appeared to be at a halt. There was no suspect or motivation for such a horrific act. The public's need for justice slowed down the investigation and constantly provided erroneous leads about Jessica's life. Here are a few of the most popular theories on social media. Locals, for example, accused Brian Rudd, Jessica's high school ex-boyfriend, of acting jealously in the heat of the moment. Others speculated that Jessica sold someone incorrect drugs for many $100s, which may have enraged a dealer. "This is the most puzzling case I've ever worked on," said District Attorney John Champion, who has been with the county for 22 years. He has been working on Jessica's case since December, collaborating with local investigators, the MBI, FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and the United States Marshal Service. According to Champion, they interviewed and re-interviewed approximately 130 persons. There are various people named Eric and Derek. Authorities have yet to arrest any suspect. After some time, investigators were able to reconstruct the final week of Jessica's life, minute by minute, leading up to her terrible death. After receiving a phone call on December 5, 2014, Jessica drove to the M&M Mini Mart. After receiving a call from a friend, she bought $14 worth of gasoline and left in her car at 5:15 p.m. She called her mother about 5:45 p.m. and said she'd be back soon. Her hair was twisted back into a bun, and she was dressed in camouflage pajama bottoms. She then made a few more stops, one at an unknown house and another in the next town, before arriving at the scene of her sad death, possibly already accompanied in her car by the person who would take her life. Surveillance cameras also caught a man in a striped shirt refueling a petrol can before driving in the same direction as Jessica. However, there was no confirmed information concerning the man's subsequent movements. Cell phone data showed that she spent about 10 to 15 minutes near a traffic light on Highway 6, traveling towards Batesville. The mystery hour, which lasted 62 minutes from 6:30 p.m. to 7:32 p.m., took some time to unravel. Jessica's phone indicated that she arrived on Heron Road at 7:30 p.m., where her burning car was later discovered. So, where did Jessica Chambers go, and what caused her horrific death? The investigation progressed slowly, with 17 suspected gang members detained in December 2015 in a separate case including allegations of illegal possession of weapons, banned narcotics, and counterfeits. District Attorney John Champion did not expect any of the gang members to be directly involved in the fire event. It turns out that during the plea discussions, all gang members were given the opportunity to aid the investigation. Thus, the gang members pointed to a specific Quentin Tellis. Then, about an hour before the fire, investigators discovered who Jessica was. However, in February 2016, authorities announced a pause in the case to undertake a more thorough investigation and determine a motive. The lack of official suspects fueled the proliferation of false rumors, which spread over the internet and subsequently throughout the town. This scenario drew in online detectives. A Facebook campaign named Justice for Jessica was set up, with a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and widespread search for her perpetrator. Rumors arose online that Jessica, who had previously dated African-American males, had been targeted by white nationalists due to her involvement in interracial relationships. Online conspiracy theorists, on the other hand, claimed that the perpetrators were African Americans because Jessica was a member of a gang and was killed in reprisal for attempting to leave it. However, none of these theories were officially confirmed. The inquiry grew particularly interested in the character of Quentin Tellis. After examining social media and Jessica's cell phone, investigators discovered who the young cheerleader had been conversing with in her final hours. During the first interrogation, 29-year-old Quentin told us that the meeting, which had been organized by text message, was their sole encounter, and he didn't know her well, only asking for a lift home. However, after gathering more information and presenting all of the messages, Tellis was arrested on accusations of arson in the death of Jessica Chambers. Text conversations show that Tellis regularly sent Jessica demands of a highly intimate nature. On the day of the tragedy, Jessica texted Quentin at 9:02 a.m. She told him she had just woke up, and he replied a few minutes later that he had as well. At 1:09 a.m., Tellis texted Chambers, "I'm ready," shortly after she stopped at an M&M gas station. She was caught on surveillance tape leaving the M&M a few minutes later, possibly to pick up Tellis. Then they picked up one of Jessica's friends. Jessica dropped Quentin off around 10:49 a.m. later. About 2:03 p.m., Tellis messaged Jessica again, this time specifically asking for love. This was his fourth message in 4 days requesting closeness via text. Other deleted texts were retrieved, including messages like, "I'm excited" and "Come lie with me," which Jessica did not respond to. The passenger seat in Jessica Chambers' torched automobile was moved back, which is normal for intimate interactions in a car. Prosecutors claimed that this was evidence that the two were having or attempting to have intimacy that sad evening. On February 24th, Tellis was charged with Jessica's murder and arson. The investigation took a long time to build the case. The first trial in Jessica Chambers' case began in 2017 in Batesville, Mississippi, roughly 50 miles south of Memphis. The trial was widely publicized, with stringent security measures in place. Jurors were secluded, and spectators were inspected by metal detectors before entering the courtroom. Prosecutor John Champion informed the jurors that they would view terrible photographs of the burned Jessica Chambers and hear testimony from approximately 35 witnesses. Investigators indicated that Jessica met Quentin Tellis around Thanksgiving in November 2014. He was 7 years her senior and had gone to the same high school before she enrolled. In October of the same year, he was freed from prison after serving time for burglary. Dustin Blount, an FBI agent, testified during the first trial. He met Jessica through a friend at a petrol station in Cortland, Mississippi. They spent a lot of time driving around together on several occasions. He went so far as to claim that they had been intimate. He indicated that they had been in the passenger seat, going on to say that the passenger seat had been reclined back and that he was sitting in it with Jessica Chambers sitting on him. In court, John Champion said that they exchanged a number of text messages, including one on the day she died, in which he wanted intimacy. The front seat in the burnt car was moved downward, as Tellis had mentioned during their prior encounter. Champion alleged that Tellis tried to kill her by strangling her, then doused her with gasoline and lit her on fire. A friend of Jessica who testified stated that the three of them had ridden in Jessica's car the day before the incident. Later, Tellis admitted to detectives that he saw Jessica that night and they went to a fast food restaurant together. Several individuals he claimed to have been with when the fire erupted were unable to validate his alibi. He then showed on a store surveillance video several miles away buying a phone card for a pal in Louisiana. Tellis did not testify for his own defense during the trial. Several emergency responders at the scene of the incident reported hearing Jessica say the names Eric or Derek, which was a key part of the defense. Finally, 2 jurors commented on the fact that Quentin Tellis's name did not sound like Eric or Derek. Panola County District Attorney John Champion cited text exchanges in which Tellis constantly requested closeness in Chambers. You'll see text chats between them in which Quentin repeatedly asks Jessica for intimacy and she continually denies him. Champion testified at the first trial. It was shown that he sent her a series of text messages asking intimacy, including one on the day of her death. Also, FBI agent Dustin Blount stated that after questioning, Tellus admitted to removing Jessica's contact information and all of their text messages from his phone shortly after her death. When asked why, Quentin calmly replied, "I wasn't scared. But once we found out who it was and who had died there, I just deleted my contact with her, because I didn't want to keep a deceased person's phone number, which would no longer be utilized." During the first trial, FBI agent Dustin Blount proved that Tellus and Chambers met through a buddy at a gas station in their small community of Cortland. "They drove around together a lot," said Agent Blount, who remembered interviewing Tellus. He went so far as to claim that they had been intimate at one time. Agent Blount, who visited with Tellus at his residence 11 days after Jessica's death, asked him to explain the intimate encounter and indicate where it took place. Tellus pointed to a driveway south of the house he shared with his mother. In December 2014, he and his mother lived in a trailer along the road from the convenience store where Jessica Chambers was last seen before the fire. His DNA was detected on the woman's keys, and his cell phone records showed he was at that area on the night in question. However, Quentin Tellus maintained his innocence. Darla Palmer, the defense attorney, encouraged the jury in her opening statement to reject the mobile phone location evidence, arguing that it could not show that Tellus and Chambers were in the same area. Quentin has always maintained his innocence, telling authorities in the interrogation room despite being threatened with execution penalty if the case went to trial. "I've told the truth. I didn't end Jessica's life. I don't have the heart to end anyone's life." His family alleges that the police are simply looking for someone to blame in a case that has become a hotly debated racial issue after Tellus, an African-American, was detained for the attractive white cheerleader. Investigators looked at possible connections to other recent fires in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. Jessica was a white woman who dated African-American males, and she was not the first white woman to face criticism for her interracial relationships, but no linkages were identified. "I can't tell you how many various hypotheses we've discussed," said the champion. Typically, law enforcement can rapidly identify suspects in homicides by interviewing witnesses and using street informants. But no matter how much we cooperate with people, listen to testimony, take DNA swabs, and conduct polygraph tests, we haven't gotten any closer to making an arrest. The first trial in 2017 ended in a mistrial due to uncertainty about the jury instructions. They declared that a guilty conviction must be unanimous, but did not specify the same for a not guilty verdict. Officials stated that the jurors appeared to conclude that Tellus's innocence was indicated because they were unable to reach a majority decision. By the time of the retrial in 2018, Quentin Tellus was being investigated in Louisiana for the death of student Ming Chun Shao and the unauthorized use of a stolen bank card. In May 2019, he was charged with second-degree murder in connection to Shao's death. The second trial was very tough. Jurors were given a photo of Jessica Chambers that firefighter Cole had shot upon arriving at the scene. Cole told jurors that the sight of Chambers, her lips blackened with soot, haunted her, and that she sees the photo she took every morning and night. When a seasoned firefighter discovered the young woman lying on the ground, scarcely able to talk after being deliberately set on fire, he said he had never seen a victim with such serious burns before. She sat on a blanket. Her hair was singed, there was soot around her nose and lips, and blisters covered her entire body. Cole, the Panola County Director of Emergency Operations, told the jurors that he sat and held her hand. "That's all I could do," firefighter Cole Haley said, fighting back tears. Paramedic Bradley Dixon said that her skin was hanging from her lips and nose. "I told her, sweetheart, it's going to be okay, and she said, 'I'm going to die.' So I laid down beside her," Haley recounted. Her eyelashes and brows were gone, and her hair on her head was a warm, matted clump. A woman named Sherry Flowers, who had not appeared in the first trial of Tellus, told investigators during questioning that she had picked up a hitchhiker on the night Jessica Chambers was tragically killed. In court, Sherry Flowers did not recognize Tellus and agreed with the prosecutor that she did not know who she had picked up. However, she told the court that a man flagged her down and she stopped because she thought it was her cousin. She agreed to give the man a ride, whom she described as an African-American male, about 20 years old, slim to medium build. Flowers initially did not contact investigators, and when asked why in court, she said, "I couldn't remember. and thought it wasn't relevant to the case. Nonetheless, prosecutors attempted to link this ride to Jessica Chambers' death, claiming it gave Quentin Tellis the opportunity to leave Jessica's car and return to set it on fire. Tellis, who was 26 years old, stood 5 feet 9 inches tall. However, the defense contested the timing, and Flowers admitted that she was unsure of the exact time of the ride, only saying, "I know I picked someone up." The investigator also presented that Jessica Chambers' keys were found in a ditch 2 days after her death, near the spot where the hitchhiker was picked up. The defense objected to the keys being admitted into evidence, arguing that it was impossible to prove where the keys were at the time. During the retrial, jurors were required to visit the crime scene and hear more testimony. The second trial was highly emotional, with witnesses breaking down on the stand and spectators weeping as photographs of the young woman Jessica Chambers' charred abdomen and face were exhibited. In 2018, the second jury failed to reach a verdict in the Tellis trial, making it the second jury in 2 years to be deadlocked over whether Quentin Tellis was responsible for setting Jessica and her car on fire. One of the first responders, who testified tearfully, embraced the girl's father as he stepped down from the stand. Despite the fact that the suspect had been tried twice, the case remains officially unsolved. Jessica Chambers' death drew a lot of media attention at first, but as media interest faded, the story piqued the interest of internet detectives all over the world. Despite this, online sleuths continue to scour social media for any clues that investigators may have overlooked, developing their own, often bizarre theories about who truly killed Jessica Chambers. According to reports, Jessica Chambers left her house at 5 p.m. on the night of the crime, telling her mother she was going to a nearby gas station. Surveillance footage from the gas station shows Chambers there twice. To this day, one of the most contentious aspects of the Jessica Chambers case is what happened between her leaving home and her tragic death. Amateur detectives have tried to crack the case on their own, developing their own theories, sometimes following false information and even harassing Jessica Chambers' family and friends. The footage shows Jessica fueling up, then heading toward the store and waving off camera before approaching them. These individuals, ranging from conservative bloggers to gluten-free bakers from Montreal, boating enthusiasts from Florida, and grocery coupon collectors from North Carolina, claim to seek justice for Jessica above all else. Instead, they have terrorized her once peaceful hometown with their relentless demands for answers to their dubious theories. In the process, they spread rumors that seep into real life, stirring racial tensions, digging up old grudges, and reigniting. For these amateur detectives, Jessica's death is not a mother's tragedy. It's a pastime. Media critics use the term missing white woman syndrome to describe the national obsession with victims who are young, blonde, and white, and Jessica fit all of these criteria, a former cheerleader with flaxen hair from a small hometown. Outsiders can easily track down social media accounts and even phone numbers of Jessica's family members, friends, ex-boyfriends, and sworn enemies, all of whom have reported being contacted by strangers wanting to interrogate them about whether they took the life of the teenager.